All right. So, if you are the parent of a child that's planning to take the SAT or the ACT, or if you think they might need accommodations, especially if they've already been placed on an IEP or a 504 plan in their school, this information might be of relevance to you. So, to receive accommodations on the SAT and the ACT, your child needs to have a documented disability. It's important to note, however, that getting a diagnosis will not automatically qualify them for accommodations. Um, as it relates to the SAT, an application for accommodations has to be submitted to the College Board, and they are the not-for-profit group that's in charge of pretty popular tests like the SAT, the PSAT, or Advanced Placement Tests. The College Board says on its website that the majority of the students who get accommodations at their school will probably be approved, but this site also makes very clear that proper documentation still needs to be submitted for these students. There are also deadlines for submitting applications so they can be reviewed and approved before the test date. The College Board has a section on its site detailing its services for students with disabilities, SSDs, and your child's school can submit an SSD application, or you can submit it on your own. The College Board lists 7 specific guidelines for documentation. Your child's application for accommodations on the SAT needs to include details on, number 1, and I'm gonna read these. Your child's specific disability is diagnosed by someone with the appropriate credentials. Number 2, current evaluation and diagnostic testing. In most cases, this means the tests need to have taken place within the past 5 years. Number 3, your child's educational, developmental, and medical history. Number 4, the comprehensive testing and techniques used to arrive at the diagnosis, including test results with their subtest scores. Number 5, your child's functional limitations, explaining how the disability affects their ability to participate in the test. Number 6, the specific accommodations being requested, such as the amount of time or the amount of extended time required, or the maximum amount of time your child can be tested in a day. And finally, number 7, the professional credentials of the evaluator, such as the licensure, certification, or area of specialization. And so it would behoove you, if you end up having your child tested, to also get that credentialing information, even if you're tested, a few years before your child would take the SAT. So the ACT has its own set of accommodation or documentation guidelines for requesting accommodations. And so it's a whole 10-page document. I went in and pulled the criteria for diagnostic documentation, as well as the specific documentation you would need to start the process of requesting accommodations for your child on the ACT exam. So the criteria for diagnostic documentation is actually quite similar to that of the SAT, but you need a qualified professional must provide a written statement or written documentation of the following things. They have to state the specific impairment as diagnosed. It has to be current, and so it has to have been diagnosed or reconfirmed within 3 academic years of the date of the request. It has to describe the presenting problems and developmental history, including relevant educational and medical history. It has to describe substantial limitations. So what are the adverse effects of your diagnosis on your learning or your other major life activities? And so the substantial limitations resulting from the impairments as supported by the test results. So because of this diagnosis, what is it that you're unable to do? It has to describe why recommended accommodations are needed, and it has to provide rationale explaining how these specific accommodations address the substantial limitations and alleviate the impact of the disability when taking a timed standardized test. So how pretty much how would these accommodations support you or give you the same opportunity at being successful on this test as your peers who do not need accommodations. All right, so how will this help? It has to also, similar to the SAT, establish the credentials of the evaluator. And so once again, if you plan on your child taking that test, make sure that you get either way, in the event that you need that test for anything else, those evaluation results for anything else, it would be imperative that you have the licensure information of the person that evaluated your child. So make sure that's something you don't leave the office with. And finally, it has to include the comprehensive assessment with the evaluation dates used to arrive at the diagnosis. So whatever evaluation is used to diagnose your child and qualify them for the IEP or the 504 plan needs to be included in the documentation you submit with this application to the ACT. So what is, and that those things are what need to be included in the written documentation from the qualified professional. Okay. Now, what is the specific documentation you need? So to show whether accommodations have previously been provided in an academic setting or on other standardized tests due to the disabilities, the evaluators and or the qualified school officials must provide one of the following documents. If accommodations have been provided, include the special education service or accommodations page from the IEP or the Section 504 plan or official accommodations plan. And so whatever is in process in your child's school that's giving them supports on testing, a written document of that needs to be included in your application packet. If no accommodations have been provided by the school, include a detailed explanation of why no accommodations were used in the past and why accommodations are needed at this time. So what has changed? And so I'd imagine that, like I said, when I was explaining 504 plans, say an accident occurs and that's made it so that your child is unable to write with one of their hands, or they're unable to do something that will require, because of that accident, that they have more time to test. And so that's an example of something that might result in you having your child having not received accommodations in the past, but needing them now. And so that's how that one might play out. And so in addition, you got to complete a diagnostic documentation. So no, diagnostic documentation may be required to substantiate a need for accommodations on the ACT, particularly when accommodations have been provided in the past. So diagnostic documentation are the evaluation results from your child's IEP or 504 plan that might specifically be requested if your child has received accommodations on testing in the past. Okay, so that is a 10-page document. I'd be more than happy to send it to you or go more in depth with you on it if that is what you would need. But just understand that if you anticipate or if you currently have a college-bound child, and it's important to recognize that the SAT and the ACT are milestones in their academic career. And so it is perfectly fine to acknowledge that they need supports. And, you know, if that's what it will take to make sure that your child gets to the next level and has the same opportunity as their peers, then don't be ashamed in reaching out and securing those resources. And so I'm here to assist in any way that you need me. If you choose to have your child evaluated in order to receive accommodations on the SAT or ACT, as you could probably imagine by the things I just ran through, it's not an easy process. And if the school agrees to do an evaluation, if one has not been done in the past, the district has up to 60 days to complete it after you've given consent. And so keep in mind that if you need an evaluation done specifically for accommodations on these tests, that there is a timeline in place. And so you need to give time for the testing organization to review your application, for the college board to review the application. You'd probably want to give at least 2 months for that to happen. And so, because there might be a chance that the college board is requesting more documentation from you. And so that might extend the process even longer. And so it's best to start looking into accommodations immediately. 9th grade is not too soon, okay? And so these are things that I've experienced, things that I've researched. However, I'd highly encourage those of you with college-bound teens to reach out to an expert friend of mine by the name of Treasure Shields Redmond, who's in the business of helping parents secure a debt-free college career for their children. And she can answer more in-depth questions that you may have around this process. And so I've made sure to include her website link in the description with this video. So hit me up if you have more questions, or holler at Treasure if you have questions specifically related to navigating the special education process for your college-bound teen. All right, peace, y'all.